Welcome to Wednesdays with Willa. I am your host, Willa White, and this is my weekly podcast show that airs on Wednesday mornings at 10 a.m. Eastern on my Facebook page, Willa White Medium. It also goes out on the Lilydale Assembly Facebook page and my YouTube channel. So you got lots of places that you can tune in, you can view, you can replay it later. So I encourage you to like and share and follow and subscribe and all of those good things because this is year 8 of episodes. So I've got lots of great past material that you can be binge watching to your heart's content. It's a treasure trove of great guests that I've had over the years. The topics usually relating to spiritualism, mediumship, healing, faith, family, and more. And it's always great to explore new topics and new people. And today I have with me Fiona Williams. Thanks for being here today, Fiona.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, yes. Fiona is coming this summer to Lilydale. She's one of our wonderful 2025 highlights. And I encourage you to check out the website lilydaleassembly.org so you can get registered for her classes. Just give you a little background about Fiona. She is a Course in Miracles teacher, a hypnotherapist, and also a life coach, as well as being an author. You've written books about A Course in Miracles and even children's books. And you're here to explore in Lilydale true forgiveness and to really help people access that utilizing the healing methods of A Course in Miracles.
Yeah.
And you've got your own wonderful story that you're going to share with us today about how you healed yourself using these techniques and make that accessible for our viewers so that they can really have the hope and clarity and a process of wisdom so that they can really heal themselves in their own lives and their own relationships. And I'm so excited about what you have to share with us today.
Thank you. I'm so excited to share with everyone. And when you said that it's make it accessible for everyone, it is accessible for everyone. The first thing that I would share is that spirit is your true identity. It's your higher self. It is a fundamental part of you. And I like to say that spirit is the most natural part of you. So it is accessible for everyone. And I hope to share with you both at Lilydale and today ways that you can start to access your true spiritual identity.
Oh, I love it. I know a lot of viewers are going to be like, this is just what I needed.
Mhm.
It's
Absolutely.
nice to have that resource and be able to tap into it. And
Yeah.
maybe we should give viewers just a brief description of A Course in Miracles in case they're not familiar with that, just so we
Yeah.
have a sense of that for them.
For sure. A Course in Miracles is a spiritual thought system. It came about in the 60s as a sort of a response to the collective shift of love and peace over war. So we were ready. There was a shift in our collective thinking that said there should be an answer. And that answer was given, and it was scribed through Helen Schuckman. And here we are today. A Course in Miracles has affected so many people, millions of people in so many beautiful ways. And it's growing. It's very, very popular. I do liken it, if you're familiar with Eckhart Tolle, who wrote The Power of Now, Michael Singer, who wrote The Untethered Soul and Living Untethered. You can find the wisdom of A Course in Miracles woven throughout those thought systems as well. It does use Christian terminology purely to appeal to a Christian audience, but it is a path to enlightenment. And it likes to say that if it's for you, you will know.
That's right. And
Yeah,
understanding it more from a Christ consciousness that we
yeah,
can enter into that space and
yes,
perceive and receive our world in that way.
absolutely. Yes, absolutely. And it is about mind training. It's about training your mind. What I love about A Course in Miracles and what it is unique about it is that it describes where fear comes from.
Mm.
It exposes the ego's thought system. So at times, it's sobering, right? You're learning about where these thoughts come from. But that's good because the sooner you know where they come from, the sooner you can aim to correct it. And that's also what A Course in Miracles does. So it describes the problem, but it also offers the solution. And in that it is unique. And true forgiveness, which is the essence of A Course in Miracles, is an advanced form of forgiveness and is the quickest way to enlightenment.
I love it. I know we want to sink our teeth right on into true forgiveness in many ways, but there's that resistant part of many people,
Hmm.
ourselves included, where we're just like, I
Yeah.
don't want to have to forgive about that. I don't want to forgive myself. I don't want to forgive other people. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's an evolution of process. But
It is.
when you embrace it in a more full context, then you just say, this was easier than I thought it was going to be when you get through
Yeah.
it, right?
It's easier because it's not you, your ego self with the ego limitations that's doing it. You're asking for help. You're reaching to something that's above the battleground, of Course in Miracles would say.
Mm,
So,
hmm
in that
hmm
regard, we kind of just welcome, we invite, and we get out of the way. We let spirit do its work by remaining open minded, or as I like to say, staying in receiver mode. I've
hmm
asked for help. I've realized I can't do it with my own ego self, this identity that I think I am, and I've asked for help.
Yeah. And about the time where you've been forcing your own will and you've been hitting your head up against the wall and you're just driven beyond about
Yeah,
it. When you really let go, let God, as they say,
yeah,
there is this sense of, okay, I give myself over to the greater power. And it's amazing how God cleans things up. All of a
yeah,
sudden,
yeah.
it's just like sometimes things get cleaned up in 2 weeks and you're like, how could that be? You're almost a little like upset because you're like, why couldn't I do that? Like, because I've been trying, and now you're like happy it's happened, but you're
Yeah.
also like, why couldn't I?
Yes, yeah, that ego resistance. The
Yeah,
ego resistance shows up in a lot of ways. And one of the major ways would be, but I'm right. But I think I'm right. I
yeah,
think I know how this should go.
right. And
Yeah,
so we get really set in our ways and our perceptions, and especially when people are sensitive because
yeah,
they want to control their environment, control
yeah.
their emotions so they don't feel like they have to go over into hypersensitive mode. So there's
Yes.
a lot of having to give over in those moments. But it is delicious when you're in the flow with spirit, with God's source of all. There's a true freedom that happens
Yes,
in those
absolutely.
moments. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, it is freedom. And with practice and the more you get used to correcting fear thoughts instead of giving into them, you actually just start to feel better. You actually just start to feel less reactive as your mind heals of the ego thought system. And in that regard, it actually just starts to, you just kind of feel like this is wisdom, right? I'm wise to not delve into the conflict. It's a good idea that I don't analyze this. It's best that I step out and observe and ask for help. So it kind of just feels like you're doing the right thing.
Mhm.
You're doing the same thing by stepping out of the ego mode and asking for help.
I think that is such an incredible and important point because there's it takes the figuring out
Yeah. Yes.
away.
Yeah, totally.
When you have to figure things out, it feels like the well runs dry more quickly. You're using your own energy, your own brain cells are resisting along the
Yeah.
ways, and
Yeah.
you're not open to the intuitions that are coming
Hmm.
to you because
Yeah.
you're in analytical mode. And
Yeah.
so when it comes to that mind training, you were referencing
Mhm.
of not letting yourself think about certain things or keep going into that unhealthy pattern of reaction is how I like
Right.
to term that. When you recognize you're heading into the weeds, you say, you know
Yeah.
what, I cease and desist this. I move myself into
Yeah.
a healthy pattern of reaction. And
Hmm.
it takes practice
Oh God, yeah.
until that's like your automatic, your default
Yeah.
mode.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
how would you suggest that people do that? How would you suggest they train that aspect of their mind?
Well, first of all, it's going to come from your self-awareness. When you start to recognize that I am reacting, it's actually the first step in true forgiveness. I recognize I'm upset. I recognize that I'm reacting. And that is crucial because, think about in your past all the times where you did react and you didn't know, you didn't realize you were in it, you stayed in it, you perpetuated it, You involved other people, you analyzed it. So
Mhm.
essentially, we're kind of mesmerized or hypnotized by that ego content. We're the story. That's what the ego identity is. It's like the ego mind needs this story to uphold itself in your psyche. And so when you find yourself in it, right? It seems like there's no way out. But when you start to glean some self-awareness of, oh my goodness, here I am reacting. Here's panic, here's depression, here's anxiety, here's uncertainty, worry, concern, whatever it might be. That's a good thing. You're starting to wake up because you're no longer totally mesmerized by it. So
Mhm.
a part of you is going, okay, what's happening here? And it is from that first step of recognizing that I'm upset that I can start to make appropriate steps to correct my thinking. And that
Mhm.
is foundational to what we're taught in A Course in Miracles. That first step of true forgiveness, yes, I recognize that I'm reacting, but fundamental to that as well is that I don't blame other people or the world for how I'm feeling. I am the perceiver. I'm the one who perceived this in a way that is upsetting, and here I am reacting. Now, there's a lot of resistance to that first step, a ton, right? There are more, gentle examples of I stub my toe and maybe I curse and, all of that. Like people are like, okay, yeah, that's all me. I reacted. It becomes more challenging when in a situation of abuse.
Oh, yeah.
So it's a very, you have to allow yourself that gentleness, that patience to get there. I myself have been through an emotionally abusive relationship with a family member. It has been very, very challenging, but thankfully I've had a decade of true forgiveness under my belt that I've started to see how I've misperceived that person, how
Mm.
my ego identity thrived off of this story. Now, one of the beautiful things we can do in those tougher situations, whatever it looks like, is you are not asked to keep yourself in a precarious position, right? Whatever you have to do to take care of you, do that. Because a mind is not going to want to truly forgive if it's still battling the battle. If it says, no, I'm validated in this pain, this hurts, this sucks, I'm a victim. And that's deeply respected. This is your experience, and you have to honor that and take care of yourself. But when you do have that space, you can start to bring in that grace and go, I'm feeling better. I'm becoming more of an observer of it. Okay,
Mhm.
now help me to see this differently. But then there's other challenges where you're like, I can rock this out right away. Here's me going, I see myself reacting. This is clearly coming from my misperception, my judgment. And sometimes it's just easier to start to correct your thoughts. So, whatever it might be, the ego thought system is very complex. There's varying levels and degrees and extremes. You want to recognize that ego is ego.
Mhm.
And so, no matter what it appears, if you are misperceiving with the ego, that's your first step to correct that.
And for people who want to understand whether they've been misperceiving with the ego, it's about that self-assessment that's going
Yes.
on in those moments
Mm-hmm.
and the the efforts that they make to justify why they can act a certain way in
Yeah.
response to someone else's reaction.
Right.
Behooves all of us to remember that we want to have a spiritual response and not that knee-jerk reaction. And
Yeah.
especially, maybe all of a sudden dragon form happens and you
Yeah.
get just so upset and you know
Yeah.
exactly how to possibly bring that person to their knees in a
Yes.
punishing way because you just want it over. Like you said, the battleground
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
happening and the external force of this person is causing me stress and
Mm-hmm.
pain and anger and there's that desperate need of I don't want to be a victim.
Yeah.
I need to make sure they stop it.
Yeah.
And so yeah, there are all those navigating those nuances is
Yeah.
very tricky, which
Yeah.
I think is uh, it's good that in Course in Miracles it's a very clear message in
Yes.
many ways. It's very clear
Yeah.
uh, to move into a quieting.
Hmm.
within the individual,
Yeah.
within yourself. And then I feel it's as you said, an objectivity that starts to come over you. You
Yeah.
realize that by having an aggressive emotional response, you're actually cementing the karmic entanglement further.
Yeah. Yeah. True. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And you're like,
Absolutely.
oh no, I don't want this further snarled. And
Yeah.
it's the way I look at it is it's like maybe you have this tug of war rope.
Yeah.
You have to let go of the rope. The other person lands in their tuchus, game over.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, you're not responsible for how other people behave.
Hmm.
But, as they like to say, we are responsible for our reactions. Now, one thing I will highlight is that A Course in Miracles, although it doesn't always appear to be easy to apply, it is easy in the sense that it's simplistic. I
Hmm.
always like to say that the simplicity of spirit cuts through the complexity of the ego,
Hmm.
right? And so, what I would say first and foremost for anyone, like Kenneth Wapnick, he was a great teacher of A Course in Miracles. And he said, a good course student is a bad course student who forgives themselves. It
Mm.
is always comes back to true forgiveness. So, what I would highlight is that it's so important to be normal. What we can do when we invite spirit to be with us is all of those challenges that seem mundane, petty, all of those kind of things. And you're like, how is this a spiritual experience? Like that is just petty, right? But when we use it with spirit, it's referred to as the Holy Spirit, just to in A Course in Miracles, just for clarity. But I know that's a Christian term, and that's not what you have to use. But that is what we're referred to, and it's referred to as. And we ask that higher self for help, right? So whether it is an argument or you do react poorly to stubbing your toe, whatever it might be, it's it's important to recognize that this is your classroom. And so all of those little things, not just the big things, are part of your classroom. And in that regard, they're transformed, as I like to call, stepping stones to God, right? Because you're starting to see things differently. With each and every upset, I'm training myself to not totally get mesmerized by the ego again,
Mhm.
right? I'm starting to ask my higher self to help me truly perceive this, to get in there and to help me. And in this regard, this becomes a spiritual classroom, not a place where the ego is so, wants you to be afraid and go, this stuff is like, why is it so fearful? Because it's meaningless. Why do these things seem to happen? We can get caught up in why does this seem to happen? This is just dragging me down. But through spirit's eyes, it's saying, hey, this is not to bring you down. This is to wake you up. This is a stepping stone to God. So use me. Let's transform this into helping you awaken to who you truly are instead of keeping you stuck in the ego. And so, what I would say to that is if you're having those reactions, if you are in a bad mood because you're hormonal or whatever it might be, feel it. Don't resist it. Don't say, I have to be a good spiritual student. I can't stay in this 1 second longer. No, allow. Allow the feelings to arise, whatever it is, because what you want to be sure not to do is just simply to blame other people on for it. You don't want to project it out, but you're allowed to feel it. You're allowed to feel sad. You're allowed to feel angry. You're allowed to feel anxious and allow it to come up. And the less you resist it, the more it can move on, right?
Mhm.
All things will pass. You just have to let it. And once that emotion starts to move on, then you can start to bring in that corrective process. Now, to help, if you find yourself like going through something particularly challenging, like if I feel a lot of anger about something, I simply talk to my higher self. I just go, Holy Spirit, I'm going to talk to you about this. This is how I'm feeling. And I just let it out with my higher self who loves me and loves everyone. And so I'm not delving into ego mode about it. I'm reaching out for help and I'm in a safe place to let it out. There's a difference because in A Course in Miracles, we're asked to let the Holy Spirit shine in all those dark cornerstones of our mind. Let it shine in, right? And so we want to let the Holy Spirit in, and we don't want to get caught up in going, oh no, I'm a bad course student because I'm feeling this stuff. Oh no, you don't want to do that. You want to go, okay, here it is.
Mhm.
Come up safely. I'm going to give you the space to do that. You got to punch a pillow. You got to throw some ice against the shower door to let some anger out. You got to cry. Do it. Do it with your higher self. You're not alone. And when you start to feel calmer, because you haven't resisted, you've allowed, then you can start to do your true forgiveness work. And you know what? The key to true forgiveness is sincerity. I want to see this differently. I have to see this differently. I'm fed up with that anger response. I'm tired of this conflict with that person. And when you tune into how fed up you are, that's okay, that's good. And then you start to use it and you start to come out of it. But denying your emotions is denying the power of your mind. And in A Course in Miracles, it is fundamentally shown to us how powerful our minds and our belief are. So if we start to deny those things, we're denying the one thing that's going to get us the hell out of the ego's thought system, our power, our mind's power. So it's very important. So you just start to go, okay, here it is. Here's my mind's power at work, not in the way that I want, but here it is. But I can start to change the trajectory of my thinking. And it's easier to do that when you're sincere and you've let yourself move through the emotions. Don't deny your experience, use it. Use it with the love of the Holy Spirit, with your higher self, and you will start to see progress.
Mm, that is lovely.
Yeah.
People are going to need to replay that section, I think.
Yeah. No. Well, and I will quickly share that I went through caregivers PTSD after my dog passed away. He was sick for 6 weeks with cancer, and I was getting repeatedly startled throughout the middle of the night. By the time he passed away, my nervous system was shot. So I went into essentially caregivers PTSD, hypervigilance. I went through panic attacks for almost 5 years. And they did come and go, and but you know what? It actually became by the end of it something like a panic attack. I just said, okay, here you are. Here
Mm.
you are. I got into as safe a position as I could, and I just said HS, which is the acronym Holy Spirit, Higher Self. That's how I roll. I just
Uh-huh.
said HS. I know you're with me. And even something as crippling as a panic attack started to change.
Mm.
And I didn't let it break me down. I realized this is would be, I hope, really helpful for everyone.
Mhm.
Your challenge, whatever it might be, that heightened emotional response, that challenge with a family member or a coworker, whatever it is a moment in time. It is a phase. It is not your forever. Right? So when we start to use true forgiveness and we start to correct our misperceptions of the situation, we start to go above the battleground, then we start to see that really was just a moment in time. I've been through PTSD, an emotionally challenging abusive relationship with a family member, Meniere's disease, which is a vertigo disease. I've been through all of that in the past 12 years. And not once did I feel stuck.
Mm.
And it was because I worked to have that foundation of true forgiveness as part of my thinking. I used it
Mm-hmm.
and much more peaceful because of it today.
Yeah. Having those foundational principles to rely on, to lean on during those times of difficulty or challenge are essential. And
Yes.
it's essential of spiritual food. But it's
Yeah.
being able to say, oh, if I get a little off of my thinking, this is what I can refer to. That just reading a couple of lines in A Course of Miracles or maybe a devotional book or whatever it is that will reset you
Yeah.
so that you remember who you are in those moments because we
Yeah.
can get off track. And
Yeah.
just in your example of having to caregive for your dog and all that hypervigilance,
Yeah.
So many people, when they're caregiving for a pet or a human, they do get into a habit,
Yeah.
a chemistry, body chemistry
Yeah.
habit,
Yeah.
that they have to always be kind of supercharged up
Yeah.
in those ways, even
Yeah.
though they're exhausted and
Yeah.
hitting those adrenals hard, right?
Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
And so then you're kind of coming off of that and you're like, I'm okay, I'm all right.
Yeah.
Trying to find the healthy new pattern. And we have to be gentle with ourselves as we
Absolutely.
figure out who we are now, because our
Yeah.
identities can get so wrapped up in those habits that we
Yes.
formed with another person or identity that we had
Yeah.
in those moments.
Yeah.
And that it is just a moment. It's hard to think of it as a chapter, especially if, let's say, someone who has been married for decades and decades and their partner passes, their spouse or partner passes, and they're like, I don't know who I am now.
Yeah. Absolutely. That identity. Yeah.
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 And they
100.
can be depressed, they can be angry, they can, not want to respond or really interact with life anymore because it's just too much. So there are a lot of applications for this, and having a
Yeah.
resource like A Course in Miracles and having classes that you can take to have people clarify these terms and
Mhm.
experiences, I think is so helpful, because then
Yeah.
you're not just in this little no man's land
Yeah.
of trying to understand, but it doesn't make sense. Sometimes you need a translator or someone to help you navigate that path.
Absolutely. Like because when people, it's about experience. So when if someone has experienced something and they can help guide you along, and then you will have your own experience and you
Yes.
will start to, and that's what we're taught in A Course in Miracles, that it is through our experiences that we'll start to recognize that the Holy Spirit is true, that the Holy
Mm,
Spirit is there for us, that we're not alone. And so we're, as it's called the development of trust. I'm developing my trust in my higher self. And it is a process and we have to allow it. But it is important to recognize that thinking with the ego is a habit.
mhm.
And you don't want to beat yourself up for having a habit, right? Because if you feel guilty about having the ego experience, that's the ego sneaking back in the back door again.
Ego
It's like
got you
just,
again.
yeah. It's like just stop, right? It thrives through your belief in it, right? And as we're taught in A Course in Miracles, once we just start to dispel our belief in the ego simply dissolves. It is being fed by you. It's not a snarling beast. It's not a devil. It's not something outside of you. It's something you made and now you're invested in, and you think it's you. And that's why we need help from something above the battleground, from
Mhm.
outside of the thought system. And that is the right mind. That is the Holy Spirit,
Yes.
our higher self. I want to point out very clearly, because I know some of the listeners may not be familiar with A Course in Miracles. I want you to know that your higher self, that again, this is just a term that I'm using. It speaks to us in a way for each of us that we will all recognize. If you have a spiritual experience looking at a beautiful flower, and you start to feel your connection and your oneness with something bigger, then that's perfect. That's you. You go, you do you, right? It's going to look differently, but your higher self knows how to speak to each and every one of us in a way that we will understand. So open your mind and trust that you will be guided. Again, that's a process to develop that trust, but that's what we're doing when we're training our minds.
Yeah. To
Yeah.
have more full awareness of that sacred connection
Mm-hmm.
and sacred support.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
I like the term Holy Spirit because
Yeah.
it brings that understanding of the source and the things that we need to have reverence for.
Yeah. Yeah.
That it's that reverence, that gratitude, that external source, but it's an upliftment that even when
Yeah.
you feel the hand of the Holy Spirit upon you, there's a great an acceptance of the grace. that has
Yes.
always been there, that will always be there for you,
Yeah,
and that literally is just a thought away,
it is.
right?
It is. Yeah, it
Oh.
absolutely is a thought away. And I will highlight, and a lot of Course in Miracles students or people who are aware of A Course in Miracles most likely know the most common quote from A Course in Miracles, which is miracles are natural.
Yes.
Miracles are natural, and healing is a result of miracles, right? And that means healing is natural. So when I say that, I've been through those really challenging times, debilitating vertigo, panic attacks, anger, so much anger with that emotionally abusive relationship, so much frustration. Oh my God, I felt it in my bones.
Mm.
Healing is natural. I'll get out of it because that's healing is why I'm here. And as we're taught in A Course in Miracles, when you give your mind a focus, it can't help but inevitably reach that result. That's why A Course in Miracles says the truth is as sure as God.
Hmm.
You will remember who you truly are. You will awaken. It is as sure as God because you start to direct your mind there and healing will occur. So we're training our minds to go, okay, ego mode, and we're starting to shift, right? And yeah, you're going to have apparent setbacks. It's going to look that way. Maybe another challenge, a little larger, comes along again. You're like, oh man, not this again. Use it. It's a
Hmm.
stepping stone. It's not meant to knock you back. And so you start to repurpose all of your challenges. And man, how empowering,
I love
right?
that.
That
Repurpose your challenges. I like that phrase very much.
Absolutely. And so in A Course in Miracles, it's like we're so empowered. It's like a giant motivational document. This is how you've been working against yourself. And when you're ready, recognize that you don't have to keep doing that. And here you are. But it's always going to begin with you, the decision maker, of
Mhm.
how you choose to think about something. So, very quickly, if we have a situation, I have the choice to think about it with the wrong mind of the ego, this habitual way of thinking that I'm used to. And that's where we can have hair trigger responses. There's my temper, there's the sadness, there's the anxious response, right? Okay, there's the habit. But we're
Mhm.
starting to build it where we look at it with the right mind of spirit. Okay, here's my choice. Here's me reacting. There's that thing happening again. There's that person. Here's my perception of them that I don't like. And now I have a choice. Who am I going to use? The wrong mind of the ego
Mhm.
or the right mind of the Holy Spirit? The ego is going to keep you in it. It's going to, because it thrives through your belief, right? It needs conflict to stay alive through your belief in it.
It's very much a parasite at times. Yes.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. A self-inflicted parasite where with the right mind will start to, as I keep saying, above the battleground. It starts to bring your thinking above, and to that spiritual realm. And that is what's healing. And so this judges the world, makes it real, the ego, where the right mind tells you that this is just an experience and you can move beyond it to spirit. So it's what is it's reinforcing? The ego is going to reinforce this world and spirit is going to reinforce spirit.
Mm. Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's, thank you so much for explaining that to folks because I think they needed that, shall we say, the deconstruction
Absolutely.
of it so that they can piece this together and really see how it's a tapestry
Yeah.
life that's
Yeah.
happening as it's unfolding in this moment now and now
Yeah.
and now. And like I've told you, the pain body uh wants to be heard, wants to take
Yeah.
over in those moments. And it sure
Absolutely.
is tempting because you're like, I've been so good.
Yeah.
Like, I've been so good. I deserve a little flair
Yeah.
about this. But
Yeah.
there's such a recognition of the reaction. I think that is the baseline of understanding people need to bring to this. What is the reaction you want to have here in this
Yeah.
moment?
Yeah.
And perhaps this be a great time for you to share with us your story and how
Yeah.
how you sequenced yourself through that because it's a unique story, but
It
I
is.
think people can really glean from it and apply in their own lives as you tell it. So
No problem. Yeah. And I want to, before I share it, I want to say that this is the exact same thing that I used to heal from misophonia. Misophonia came about as part of the PTSD. It's a hypersensitivity to sound. So I also healed from misophonia using this. I used it to help in this challenging relationship with a family member. I use it all the time,
no,
anything and everything.
I think this is going to be great for people who have sensory issues, like
Yes.
and when um, if your hearing is a little supersonic,
Yeah.
as it
Yeah.
were, uh,
Yeah.
or if just little things rub you raw quickly, whereas it wouldn't bother anybody else. So
Yeah.
yeah, listen
Yeah.
up.
Yeah.
Pun
Absolutely.
intended. Just as a what was your what was the with the misophonia, the things that would bother you that you would hear, it
I
it
honestly,
would be the equivalent of nails on the chalkboard, I'm assuming.
it was more like probably low thumping. So like my neighbor with his bass in his car,
Ah,
my neighbor with his washing machine or dryer, the cop helicopter going up in the middle of the night, just kind of patrolling the area. I found that to be, yeah, you name it.
overstimulating at that point.
Yeah, my because my nervous system was so out of whack that it just came upon. Oh, the gardeners. Oh my goodness, the gardeners. When they came around, the landscapers. So it got to the point that I had them text me an hour before they were going to show up, and I'd get the hell out of there.
Oh,
For the hour.
because
It
you're
was hard.
thinking of mowing and weed whacking and all those things.
Yeah, yeah,
That noise would just
yeah,
drive you to the edge.
yeah. It just it was just get out. Just get out kind of response. Yeah, I couldn't handle it. Yeah, so it's that was really what it was
And
about. But
you can't be a bubble girl. It sounds like you can
no.
just go
Well,
live
and
in a little bubble.
that's the
You
thing.
could
And
try.
but you know what? I also don't want to live like that, you
Right.
know?
Yeah.
And so I saw it as I see all things, is that it was a wave of unconscious guilt. In A Course in Miracles, our unconscious guilt is, as we're taught, is from that decision where we thought we separated from our source, right? And Eckhart Tolle talks about the separation. It's the fall from grace, Adam and Eve being kicked out of the Garden of Eden, right? This is
It's
what we're
known as
talking about.
the human race thought, which is an illusion.
Yeah,
I really love studying Florence Scovel Shinn because
beautiful.
she does such a wonderful job of making these concepts accessible, of
Yeah,
getting out of what's the human race thought
yeah,
of that we deserve pain and punishment.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yes, and it is unconscious, and then it kind of comes up in your reactions, right? Beneath that anxiety is unconscious guilt. Beneath the anger is unconscious guilt, right? It wears many masks. As I say, the ego puts a mask over it so you don't recognize it for what it is, right? And that's kind of foundational to what I'll be sharing with you. And so in A Course in Miracles, we're taught there's one problem. I think I left God. That one problem wears many masks, shows up in many ways to deceive you, right? So you don't heal because the ego's a survival machine and it needs your belief in it in order to survive. So here's me thinking I'm a victim of this. Here's me worried about that. All of that is just fueled by your unconscious guilt. It looks different, but beneath. And then the one solution is the remembrance that I never actually left God.
Mm,
Never
mm,
actually happened. This is known as the atonement principle.
mhm,
The
mhm.
atonement principle is at the heart of true forgiveness. It's at the heart of right-mindedness. So I'm remembering I never left my source, right? And so that's at the heart of all of it. And so with the misophonia, every time I did have a kind of spastic response to sound, I remembered that it was a wave of unconscious guilt that was rising to the surface for correction. And
Mhm.
it ultimately got to the point that I started to envision myself meditating on my lawn as the gardeners were going past. I'm like, I'm going to get to that point that I can do that. And I'll tell you, so it's been a couple of years since the misophonia healed. And the last spring, I was laying in bed and some gardeners went by, and I was like, oh no, I'm not ready to get up yet, but here they are. And I said to myself, I'm going to use the drone of the leaf blower to lull me back to sleep.
White noise. Mm.
Yeah, it totally transformed something I used to run in fear from in panic. I'm now using, oh, that sound. I'm going to use it to lull myself back to sleep. The experience of it totally transformed
Yeah.
because I used it for healing. So that's just a really quick
And that's a
example.
mind focus technique that is utilized by meditators,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
That every noise, every circumstance around you, uh, it's just going to take you deeper into your meditation,
exactly.
deeper into a state of peace than
Yeah.
all of the external things that irritate you have
Yeah.
no effect.
Yeah.
And
Exactly.
it's
Yeah.
so purposeful, and you have a mind focus that makes you have control in a nice word way.
Yeah. Yes.
Control is a nice word. So that you can be relieved of
Yeah.
having to have control over everything else around you.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So it's it's a simple recognition that at the time that did have misophonia, I was in a hypervigilant state. And a couple of years later, I'm not. I got to the point that my nervous system started to calm down. It was a healing process, and spirit was fundamental to that.
Mm.
My main healing experience was from
Yeah.
Meniere's disease. Meniere's disease is a debilitating vertigo disease. I had it since my early 20s, where it started out as essentially just hearing a seashell in my right ear. It's called oral fullness, sorry. And so deafness. And so I used to have my friends sit on my left side so I could hear them. And so it started out that way. And then when I turned 30, I started having full blown vertigo attacks. And they'd last 6 to 7 hours.
Mm.
Extreme vertigo. You can't go to the bathroom. You can't eat. You can't move.
It's debilitating. Yes.
It's debilitating. If you open your eyes, there's a chance you will vomit. So that was my experience. It transformed into that. And ultimately, Meniere's will lead to deafness. And it just came to me. I didn't know what was happening. I hadn't been diagnosed. I had gone to several doctors. They looked in my inner right ear, nothing they could see. Everything looked hunky dory. So, all the more formless. What is happening? And it's so severe, it's so extreme. And it got to the point that my mom and my husband were like, please just go to an ear, nose, and throat specialist. And I was like, fine. So I made the appointment, and it was 2 months till this specialist appointment was going to happen. That's specialists, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I had the inclination, the intuition, which is how spirit predominantly speaks to us, is through our intuition. As A Course in Miracles teaches us, all answers come to a quiet mind. So, and I had the intuition to do a healing meditation. I actually have the book right here from Gary Renard on page 79 of his book, Love Has Forgotten No One, as you can tell, one of my faves.
Mm-hmm.
And on page 79, Gary Renard has an inspired by the Holy Spirit healing meditation that he used to heal from scoliosis and a nerve disorder that he had in his hand. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to rock this out. It's my turn. I've got 2 months. This was my intuition. I'm like, Gary can do it. I'm going to do it. So I did the healing meditation. And I did it every evening. You do it every night before you go to sleep. Fundamental within it is true forgiveness,
Mm-hmm.
and along with a few other steps. And then during the day, whenever I'd have a fear response, because of course you're kind of hyper vigilant where you're like, ooh, am I going into vertigo, or, whatever it might be, I use true forgiveness on the fear responses. So I was really, really vigilant. I wasn't going to tolerate what the ego had to say about what I was experiencing.
Let's say
And
that
then
again. You were not going to tolerate.
what the ego had to say
Yes.
about this experience. And it is an attitude. It
Mm-hmm.
is, you can be quite insistent because it's your own mind,
There you go.
right? And
Mm-hmm.
so, as we're taught in A Course in Miracles, you can be just as vigilant against the ego as you are for the ego. So, we can
Mm.
start to wake up. And
Yes.
so I was not going to be tolerant of the ego's nonsense anymore. And so I rocked it out for 6 weeks, or well, pushing 8 weeks, and and I started to feel better. That oral fullness that I told you about, we're listening to a seashell, it just disappeared one day. And I wasn't really particularly concerned about it. It was maybe annoying, but nothing awful. And I was like, "Oh, that's gone. Well, I'm going to keep rocking it out." And then it came close to the it was a few days before the ear, nose, and throat appointment. And I said to my husband, I'm like, I don't think I need it. Like I just feel better, but the main thing was I didn't feel fearful. I didn't feel fearful if vertigo was going to happen again. And that is the main thing. It's the fear that's the problem, right? It's the fear that we assume.
Right. The
Right.
anticipation of bad.
Exactly. Exactly. So I wasn't feeling fear. And so I was like, I don't think this is an issue anymore. I think and he insisted because he loves me. He's like, no, you're going.
Just in case.
Yeah,
I've
totally.
been
And
I've been having you've been complaining about this for quite some time. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, he's the one carrying me to the bathroom, cleaning up
Yeah.
my vomit. I get
He kind of gets a vote there. Yep.
it. And so I went to bed. I went up to my bedroom and I decided to meditate on it. And I just said, HS, whatever you want, I will do. Like I will follow your guidance. Whatever you think is best for me, I leave it with you. And I took a moment to really settle in the atonement, to go, as we're taught in A Course in Miracles, I am not this body, I am free, for I am still as God created me. I am one with my beloved source for all eternity, and I forgive myself for thinking that I was something else, something that I made. And that's something I say to myself multiple times a day. It's a good right-minded habit. Dissolves that guilt.
That's a
And I
great
said
tip for
that's
everyone too. Hmm.
absolutely, absolutely. And so I settled in the atonement and I really felt it. I really, really felt my connection with Source. And then I was like, okay, I'm going to carry on with my day because that's what you do, right? Carry on. And so I started to go down the stairs and we have a Buddha sculpture on our landing. And I was like, I rested my eyes on the Buddha and I got this surge of energy that stopped me on my stairwell. And it just, I was like, whoa. And it came to me, I said, Buddha was a man. He became enlightened. Jesus was a man. He became enlightened. I'm a woman. I can become enlightened. Like it's all good.
Okay.
I had this genuine understanding that if they can do it, I can do it.
Yes.
Right? We're not
Yes.
different. They're my big brothers, but they're showing me the way.
And we
And
stand on their shoulders.
100%. And it's like, teach me. You're my big
Hmm.
bro. Teach me, right?
Hmm.
And so I really felt that. And again, I felt this surge. It was even stronger than the one that I felt when I was in the bedroom, that connection. This was like a power surge. And I was like, I am one in God. I don't have to worry about this. So it felt pretty damn good. I was like almost levitating down the stairs. And I just carried on with my day. And then that evening, or sorry, beg your pardon, the next day, the receptionist for the specialist called and she said, "Oh, Fiona, I'm so sorry. I have to cancel your appointment. Something's come up for the for the specialist. Would you like to rebook?" And I'm like, "No, I'm good." I wasn't given a real reason. And I tell you, if I needed it, if I really felt I needed it, and after 2 months of waiting, I would have been like, sister, what's going on? Like,
You would have
like
maybe read her the riot act, as it
I,
were.
I would have said, maybe you can inform me a little more, or yeah, let's make another appointment. But no nonsense. I was like, yeah, that's great, no problem. We'll carry on with life. And I didn't rebook, and who knows what the hell happened, but she canceled it. And I took that as a very clear sign that, you're good. Then I had a dream. I had a dream that night. And in the dream, I was staring into our large bathroom mirror, and I had a little tickle in my ear, in my right ear, because the right ear was the one that was affected by the Meniere's disease. And so in the dream, I used my pinky nail to scratch the tickle. And as I did, all this black oil started to come out of my ear, gushing, gushing out, and splattering all over the place. And I was like, oh my God. And then, weird, but that's dreams, a little monkey hand came out. And I call the ego a cheeky little monkey,
Yes. Yes.
right? Yeah.
Yes.
So,
Monkey,
so
monkey, monkey mind.
Exactly. So I was like, here's some symbolism and the black oil. And then after a while, it stopped gushing and it just stopped. And I felt the lightness go up the right side of my neck, through my ear, and out the top of my head. And I haven't had any issues since. The only thing I have is a slight sensitivity in hearing in my right ear. But
When you say slight sensitivity in hearing, what does that mean?
just if they're like, if a child was to scream here, I would feel it more. I would feel it. Whereas if it happened on this side, on my left side, I'd probably just hear it. But
Mhm.
I kind of feel noise a little bit. Like
Oh
it's the
yeah,
best way I can put it. I feel it as well as hear it. It would
I'm one of
probably,
those too.
yeah, it'd probably be a little bit of a sharper pitch. But you know what? Considering that people, you know, end up deaf, it's I'm happy to walk away with just that. And but mainly the debilitating vertigo left.
Yeah.
It was no longer part of my life, and I was able to regain my composure. And and then 2 years later, pardon me, the PTSD kicked in. So I couldn't imagine, although I know I could have done it, but I do appreciate that it probably would have been very challenging to
You
do
had to do
Meniere's
both.
and PTSD together. The fact that it was kind of hot on the heels of the other was
Yeah.
easier. Yeah,
Yeah.
but these are my experiences. These are how Fiona gets home.
Hmm.
So I'm going to use it. I'm not going
Yeah.
to lament it, right?
All
Yeah.
right.
So
And
that's my
so
beautiful.
it's a great story, and I really appreciate you sharing that with us because it, stepping us through it, like the words you chose, the mindset you chose,
Yeah.
the way you utilize them repetitively, like whenever it would come, you're like,
Yep.
mm-mm,
Yep.
I know how to, I have cracked the code, and I will continue to crack this code
Yeah.
easily and effortlessly using the
Yeah.
Holy Spirit. So
Absolutely.
that was a true determination on your part
Yep.
to not get thrown off.
Yep.
And and I imagine that while this was all transpiring and you're beating this all back, that other things in life are transpiring at the same time that could have like escalated you through these things, but you held firm to
Yep.
you're not falling off the wagon into ego's arms anymore.
Yeah. Well, it really becomes almost an intolerance for the ego, right? Where you're just like, I just can't do this anymore. And I reckon a lot of your listeners feel that way.
Sure.
Like, I just can't do this anymore. As we're taught in A Course in Miracles, there has got to be a better way.
Mm-hmm. Well, I
Yeah.
often think about how when we get that lost feeling or maybe feeling the dark night of the soul, a lot of it
Mm.
is this we're practicing the presence of God.
Yeah.
It's almost as if we've been in this illusion of separation
Hmm.
from the source, and then all of a sudden we realize that was an illusion. How did I get into that? Oh, now I
Yeah.
get it. And then,
Yeah.
divot in the forehead. It happens when you do this. But then there's that sense of even though you know these things, you're still going to have to
Hmm.
chop wood, carry
Yeah.
water. You're going to have instances where this will may have to be applied. But from what you're telling me, in your case, you haven't felt a regression per se of
No.
these things because you have really kept vigilant and I guess you could say that mental emotional hygiene
Yes. Yeah.
of it that
Yeah.
you keep on top of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, because you begin to recognize that you don't have to give in anymore and that you were the one who was,
yeah.
right? So again, there's that empowering message, right?
That I don't
And
want to live this way anymore, and you're just become
exactly.
strong and
Yeah,
overcoming of these
abs
things.
absolutely. Yeah. And when I got diagnosed with PTSD, I left the doctor's office and I just looked at my husband and I just said, this isn't going to take me down. And I essentially just had the attitude of, watch this.
Yeah,
Yeah,
tough.
yeah, watch this, right? But that's how
Yeah,
I felt.
yeah.
And that's still how I feel saying those words. Watch this, right?
Hmm.
It's like a bully in school. You're gonna tolerate that? No. Watch this.
And so, in your efforts to teach other people, the Course in Miracles understand a Course in Miracles, I should say,
Yeah.
Course in Miracles, those techniques, and apply them to true forgiveness.
Mhm.
You you are helping other people navigate those territories. Now, in your
Yeah.
case, it seems like the forgiveness was really about yourself.
Always.
The
It's
self,
always.
it's always about the self, but it was really about yourself. It wasn't like, oh, because I had a trauma that I'd experienced with this person necessarily. It doesn't seem like it was put there. I mean, you can't blame them, but initially, did you blame those things? I guess is the
No.
question. Did you
No.
initially, so for a person who does blame those things,
Yeah.
well, they left me, they abused me, they hurt
Hmm.
me in this way, they made
Yeah.
this more difficult for me.
Yeah.
They're coming from a slightly different standpoint than you
Yeah.
did about these things. What would you
Yeah.
suggest to those folks?
Well, I mean, the emotional abuse with a family member, um,
Yeah, let's go there.
from, yeah, and that's great. Let's do it. From an ego perspective, it's been harder than PTSD and Meniere's disease.
Mm,
It has taken, it's taken up most of my life. I'm 43. I'm still coming out of it. There's a ton of frustration, but there's also this innate compassion that I've had for this person. I know my family's history, which is parents coming from a war zone in
mm,
Belfast, Northern Ireland, and immigrating to Canada. I know all of my siblings have been exposed to PTSD from my parents, and I know my parents have tried their best with their perspectives. We're on this journey together, and that's just how I saw it. And I continue to see it as you are part of my journey.
mhm,
And as usual, I give it the intention of healing. And so I say, this relationship has come up for my healing and for no other reason. So let's
mm,
heal it. Because honestly, from a past life perspective, who knows how often this has played out? It's time for it to end. I'm going to heal it. That is my choice. Whatever that person does, and I tell you, they're pretty pissed at me. um, Unfortunately, it's for having gone through PTSD and not having to been able to be more present,
mm.
which I find, from an ego perspective, that's kind of frustrating, right?
Sure.
But from a spiritual perspective, it's that person is calling for love.
Mm,
And I, the best you can do in those types of relationships is to go, I am responsible for my reactions. I don't need to tolerate the ego in you. I don't need to tolerate the ego in me, right? So I'm holding better for the other person by stepping out of the situation. And I actually had no contact for a year.
mm.
It was very, very peaceful. And that's
Yeah.
something that was very hard to be honest about
It can be
was
a
that my
blessing when
life,
someone's not in your life. Yeah.
yeah, I really had to forgive myself for the guilt I felt about that, was that life was just easier with them not in it. And I really had to do some forgiveness around that guilt. And I do feel better about it. But essentially what I had just had to own Fiona's side, that I have shown love to that person. People are not always ready to accept the love that we give, but it's still held for them. We're taught in A Course in Miracles that it's held for them by the Holy Spirit. And when they are ready to accept that love, it will be there for them. So what a gift. Your love is never wasted. You are love. You're eternal, right? Without time. On and on you go. So I know that I've expressed that. I know I expressed my needs very clearly. I know I maintained my boundaries. I know that I, didn't project. And I know that the anger and the frustration that I felt, and man, I felt a ton of it, right? Rage. I didn't put that on anyone else. I just felt it with myself. Yeah, I punched a few pillows. Yeah, I threw ice in the shower to get rid of that rage. That really works. I started to feel unashamed about these feelings that we can really, our society would call ugly.
Mm, mhm.
But when you take responsibility for yourself, you start to recognize, and all the things that you've done, to try and improve and welcome healing, it starts to release you of what the other person is doing, especially if you feel like they're not holding up their end.
Right. Right.
You are in charge of you, and you happen to be in a position that you know you're not alone and you have spirit with you. That person may not be willing to recognize that, but guess what? You can hold that for them too and see the truth in them. We're taught in A Course in Miracles that when a brother behaves insanely, see the sanity in them. So I see the spark of the divine in that person, and I hold it in myself, because you cannot hold ego guilt thoughts about someone else and expect to have peace.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You have got to let it go. Every thought you hold in your mind fuels your unconscious experience, which surfaces as your conscious experience.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to start to let those ego perceptions go of that person. And that doesn't mean that you tolerate abuse. It just means that you, on a level, know you can see this differently when you feel safe, when you feel sincere. And you may not always feel that way. That's okay. Be normal, be gentle, and you will get there bit by bit by bit. But give it the intention of healing.
Yeah. I think that's really powerful for people to understand that uh, when you forgive, or you're in the process of true forgiveness, perhaps is better said,
Yeah,
the you're not enabling the bad behavior,
no,
but you are in a place of discernment, spiritual discernment,
yeah.
and you will lovingly and firmly deal with them.
Mm-hmm.
And that you can have forgiveness because, forgiveness for selfish reasons is good too. Because you don't want to carry it anymore. You're like, all that energy I've been investing in how I feel about this, that's been going down the rat hole. I want that energy. I want to recapitulate that energy, and I want to invest that wisely in my life, in other areas of my life, and aspects of my life. And so there's a rejuvenation process that happens, that you do have to get over the guilt of, did I leave a man
Yeah, yeah,
in
yeah,
the zone of the war?
yeah,
Could I
yeah,
have saved this soul? And you still
yeah.
see them as a soul, but you know that you don't have to drown with them.
Exactly. Because their journey is theirs.
Mhm.
And you and I have had our journeys, and each and every one of every person who's listening to this, your journey is yours. And
Mhm.
you might meet up with other people on the journey. Like my brother, he has gone through a really tough time. He lives in Europe now. I don't have much contact with him at all. But his journey is his, and I have to let him have it, because everything I went through has brought me to the point where I wanted to see things differently. And he will have his, and each and every one of you will have yours. And just like everyone else, it may appear that on a linear scale that they're a little further behind. It doesn't matter. It's not for us to judge. Let
Right.
them have their journey, because their journey is going to lead them to the point that, like you, they got to a place where they're going, there has got to be a better way. And I don't know about you, but I had to go through some pretty tough stuff to get to that point, right? I had to have my wake up call. We all do.
Mhm.
So, but you love them on their journey. You see the truth in them, because that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to acknowledge the true identity. So, yeah, it may appear that they're having this ego experience, but in reality, who they truly are. And this is something I will point out, that what we're taught in A Course in Miracles is that it is just a tiny part of our minds that is having this physical experience, a tiny. We're taught in the Course, which the voice for the Course is Jesus, the true message, where Jesus says it's like this experience is a ray of the sun, right? Or a ripple in the ocean,
Mhm.
right? You're so much more than that. It's just a tiny part of your mind having this experience. So, what I like to say, especially if I'm really troubled about something, is I go, there's such a massive part of my mind that knows where I really am.
There you go.
This is just a tiny, infinitesimal part. So let it heal. Let it
Hmm.
heal. They're okay. They're okay. You're okay. It may not appear that way, right? But in reality, who they truly are, who you truly are, you're at home. And something you did say stood out for me is you are not selfish to truly forgive. We need you. The collective child, the Christ mind needs you. You need me to heal. I need you to heal. And what I would say, if we're going to go down ego lane about it and define and define selfishness, is selfishness is to project your stuff onto someone else because you didn't really stop to correct, or because, like that. I guess that's what we could call it, is when you're blaming someone else and putting it on someone else when it's really, you who didn't correct, or you who has decided to, what, maybe just blame someone because you're not following your heart, because you're not correcting. I don't want to really go down ego lane or see that as real, but I think what's more responsible is to go, as we're taught in A Course in Miracles, there's a course lesson that says, I rule my mind, which I alone must rule. And
Mhm.
what that means is I am the decision maker. And once I recognize that, I can then reach out for my higher self in my right mind, right? So then I'm making that further step for my higher self. But it's me who rules my mind. You are never selfish for taking care of you.
Oh, of course not.
You
But the
know that.
understanding, a lot of times people want, they, in terms of forgiveness, they want that person who they feel has harmed them or hurt
Yeah.
them to
Yeah.
apologize. And
Yeah.
that's not always going to be true. Forgiveness is
No.
not about whether the person has apologized or not. And so you
No.
can't really hold out for that sort of situation. You have
Yeah.
to offer that forgiveness, even if it's not spoken to them,
Yeah.
forgiveness to that, because you want to thrive, you want to
Yeah.
survive, you
Yeah.
want to get into that place. So you kind of have to just be focused on your own personal responsibility during that time.
Yes.
And it goes back for me as a spiritualist to spiritual natural law, the law of personal responsibility, law of creative
Yeah.
reality, the law of grace that transcends the law of karma. There's so many that law of forgiveness that's so intrinsic to what we're doing as souls here. And
Yeah.
as you were saying, we can't be in charge of somebody else's progression. We can't then
Yeah.
go to them and say, guess what? I've been studying A Course in Miracles, and here's a book, or here's some words, and I see
Totally.
you've been doing from this perspective, and I forgive you. And
Yeah.
none of that happens. This is very
No.
private, very
Yes.
personal journey that people are on. And if
Yes.
family members happen to notice, hey, you're more chill about a lot of stuff, or
Yeah.
they happen to like notice those things, be a little bit more open to talk about it, then you can. But we don't
Yeah.
force any of this on anybody else to drag them
No.
along forward or to catch up where we think
No.
we are on any
No.
of this. And I think
No.
that your example of your brother is a good one, because so often as people are experiencing spiritual emergence
Yeah.
and having jet propels of spiritual evolution, they're like, why don't my people come along
Yeah.
with me? They want to link arms and kumbaya, but it doesn't always happen in that way.
No.
And so we
No.
have to go along ahead with that. And that true forgiveness, it will be there almost like a beautifully wrapped present that's in the aura of the person that we've had our thing with, right? And
Yeah.
then at some point they're going to unwrap it, and we kind of want them to unwrap it right now.
Yeah. Totally. Absolutely. Like, yeah, you want to go, dude, you're suffering needlessly. You
Yeah,
don't need
please,
to do
please
that.
unwrap your present, please.
But it is, I think there is a beauty to just remembering the truth in others. Like it's like it de-stresses me,
Mhm.
right? And even actually to remember the truth in myself, like, Fiona, you're good. Like,
You're good.
like this is
Um,
this is this is not as heavy as the ego is making it out to be.
sure.
Remember the truth about yourself. And when you see it in others, yeah, I find it very relieving, and to just go, we're okay.
Okay now. We're okay now.
Yeah.
Any last, I know time's gone so fast, and I just
Oh,
looked at the clock and I was like, holy cow. But are there any last things that you think would be great to share as people about true forgiveness? I mean, you've been so eloquent in your examples and your sharing of
Yeah,
stories. We really appreciate you coming on the show today to do that.
my
And
pleasure.
but also, any last thoughts or tips you'd want to share with folks today?
Absolutely. Well, the major one, be normal, right? Stop
Mm,
beating yourself up for having the ego experience, but do start to bring in that awareness that it is being fed by you. As we're taught in A Course in Miracles, the key to salvation is but this: I am doing this unto myself. You are not alone in coming out of that. The second thing I would say is remember that your higher self, your spiritual identity, is fundamental to who you are. You are not alone. You start to invite, welcome. I start my day putting the Holy Spirit in charge. I start my day by accepting the atonement, remembering who I truly am, and remembering that by extension by seeing it in all others, right?
mm,
Because as you see others, you will see yourself. So those are things. And then, like, as I was sharing, like those connection moments of just sitting with the atonement for a second. This does not have to be fussy, hard work. It
mhm,
is about catching 30 seconds here and there, going, okay, I remember who I really am, right? Inviting HS if you need that help. The third thing that I would say is you are worthy. You are worthy of forgiveness. You are worthy of the time that it takes to stop and correct. You are worthy of feeling, and ultimately, you are the child of God.
mm,
That's you. And you are simply asking Spirit for the help in undoing the ego identity you made and remembering that truth and letting it come to your awareness. You don't have to do anything for it, right? It's there in your mind. You just have to start to have that support by Spirit to undo that ego identity that clouds your awareness of it. And the more you start to bring that to your awareness to go, I am the innocent child of God,
mhm.
that's going to support you greatly on your journey. And you are worthy because you are the child of God.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's what I would say.
That's powerful. And I think this is something that people need to understand that it's theirs by divine right.
Yep. Absolutely. As we're taught in A Course in Miracles, your oneness with your source and the gifts of that joy, peace, eternity, that's your inheritance.
Hmm.
So what am I choosing to identify with?
Yeah.
Right? You know what you're choosing to identify with, and it doesn't need to be that way. You can
Hmm.
choose for something better. It's a habit, though. You have to let yourself get there. Yeah.
Yeah, really powerful today. Thank you so much, Fiona, for coming on the show today and sharing with us your very personal story, but also the application of A Course in Miracles. And for
Mhm.
those who are interested in learning more about this, Fiona, as I said earlier, is going to be here this summer in Lilydale, and she will be teaching an all-day workshop. So you can get the whole shebang of how to do this and a lot more tips than even were able to be shared during our episode today. But that will be happening on July 20th. So mark your calendars. You can go ahead and buy tickets for it on the lilydaleassembly.org website. And that's on July 20th, all day, Awakening Your Right Mind through a Course in Miracles. And so we have Fiona Williams, who is, as I said, taught Course in Miracles for 15 years. And you have authored books and you've really tried to live that journey. And I really appreciate you coming on to speak so eloquently about this subject. And we really look forward to seeing you here this summer in Lilydale.
Yeah, I look forward to hugs and seeing
Yeah.
you all and just being immersed in the community. Thank you so
Oh,
much for taking the
you're
time, Willa.
so,
I
so
really
welcome.
appreciate it.
And everyone, please tune in next week for another great show of Wednesdays with Willa. And you can remember that it's 10 a.m. Wednesdays at Eastern Time on my Facebook page, Willa White Medium. All right, everyone. God bless and bye-bye.